efficient and long-lasting forms of transport that we have. They date back to Roman times, when they were used to move goods and animals into the Colosseum. But no one thought of transporting people until 1854, when Elijah Otis made a breakthrough.
He stood up at the Great Exhibition in New York on a wooden platform, and he said, "I'm going to prove to you that travelling lift is safe." And he stood there and he had a gentleman cut the only rope. The lift fell 2 inches before what was then the very first form of safety gear engaged, and he declared, "All is safe, gentlemen, all is safe."
Even with the modern version of Otis's safety mechanism in place, lifts can still travel a significant distance before the gears engage. In Chicago, a lift has reportedly dropped 84 floors, and Battalion Chief Patrick Maloney and his squad have rushed to the scene, fearing the worst.
We were going to do an elevator-to-elevator rescue, coming in off the top of the elevator and then putting them into the elevator that is working. I put 2 Squad 1 firefighters in the elevator shaft.
And at that time is when we discovered that we had a spool of cable on top of the elevator.
It was then that the fire department realized that the cause of the lift failure was a snapped cable. It was now lying on top of the emergency exit.
We couldn't get on top of it. There was no getting access to the people.
So we came back down, we reassessed, and then the thought was that we're going to breach a wall.
The elevator just so happened to be with access to a parking garage area. So we went into the parking garage, drew out our lines to cut out.
This mobile phone footage from inside the lift shows the moment the fire team began cutting through the wall.
We breached the wall with cutting tools and sledgehammers.
And we cut the cinder block, took it all out, and the elevator just was right there.
And we were able to open the door. Needless to say, they were very gracious to see the Chicago Fire Department.
We made sure that the elevator was secure, that it wouldn't move anywhere. Put a ladder down into the elevator, and everybody just walked up and out.
They were all smiling, hugging each other, and thanking us, which we were very happy to see that everything turned out to be great.
In total, the rescue operation lasted less than 2 hours. But what caused this accident to happen?
It's pretty obvious that there was probably 1 or more failures in the lift, and therefore it went down the lift shaft in an uncontrolled movement before the safety gear engaged.
The victims reportedly heard loud clunking noises outside the lift just before it stopped.
So it's very likely that this is where the brakes are kicking in and trying to slow the car on the rails. And there are different ways that this happens. It could be by gripping, or it could be by wedges going into notches on the rails. So depending on what their safety system is will depend on the sort of noises that you hear.
But why did the lift fall such a large distance before the brakes kicked in?
If you've got a rated speed of a lift of 4 meters per second, it goes above 4 meters per second, that's when the safety gear engages. So it could have travelled quite a long way, but at some point it broke its rated speed and therefore the safety gear engaged.
This was not a free fall. This was a controlled stop. If the elevator free fell, you would have had X number of dead people in there.
We walk out the apartment, go into the corridor and call the elevator. And once the elevator doors open, me, my mate and my school friend, we all piled in first, and then a bunch of randoms followed. More and more people got in the elevator, it was getting tighter and tighter. And then the elevator started dropping as we were still loading in. Break the elevator! And as this happened, you know, people like panicking, you know, so people started jumping out of the elevator. And as they're jumping out, elevator's still going with the doors right open, so the gap to actually climb out was getting smaller and smaller. So that then the elevator gained some sort of traction and then stopped halfway through the 2 levels. 14 people trapped, and the elevator was labelled for 8 people. They called the emergency phone.
I think we may have possibly overloaded the elevator. And
Joke, laughing, oh, I think we overloaded the elevator, and laughed a little bit. And then once someone actually realised how much we overloaded this elevator, people started panicking.
I can't breathe!
With so many bodies crammed into such a tight space, the temperature started to rise.
It was that hot, it was almost like a sauna.
Stop, no stop!
So one of my closest mates, he ended up ripping open the elevator door so we had some fresh air, because in the elevator shaft, well, it was actually nice and cool, thank goodness.
But the situation was about to take a dangerous turn. Suddenly, with no warning, the lift began to drop.
At this point, the door was open so we could actually see the floors going by, and this is like, whoa, one door, that's another floor, that's another floor. So we all sort of braced ourselves and holding on to whatever we could.
The fact that the car doors were open, if they started to go towards the wall which was open, then that would have been some nasty accidents where you could have actually got sucked out of the car.
With the brake failing, there was only one thing that was going to stop the lift car.
Cash, bro, we're just, oh, holy I was like, whoa, did that actually happen? Like, did we actually just drop from 8 floors to the ground? Cash, bro, we're just, oh,
They hit the buffer at the bottom. And that buffer will provide a shock absorber which will have cushioned their landing, even though the lift was overloaded. And I think this is a real lesson in why not to get as many people into a lift as you can.